So hi there everybody, and welcome to the Voosestore YouTube channel. On today's video I would like to show you how to balance a gimbal, and I'm gonna use the Moza AirCross, which currently is my favorite gimbal, and I really like it because it is a little bit lighter than a lot of the other gimbals out there. I'm gonna be balancing the Panasonic GH5 with a Vedra 16mm lens, and this is maybe not the lightest lens, but it's quite a nice lens to use and show how on when we are balancing the gimbal. So stay tuned. So first off, when you balance when you use a gimbal, at least I found it very useful to actually use some kind of a quick release plate. And the Moza gimbals actually come with a quick release plate, and that's a really nice feature. If you have one of the older gimbals, I know that some of the Zion gimbals don't have a quick release plate, and I also know that the Moza Air from the beginning shipped without the quick release plate. But if you buy a new version of the Moza Air, you will get the quick release plate. If you don't have a quick release plate, I really would recommend getting one. And one thing to actually think about when you get a quick release plate is to get a small quick release plate as you can. And one nice feature is that you should actually think of getting one that is flush, depending on how your gimbal looks like. But that's another story for another video. So first off, get your plate off and get the plate onto the camera. So now we have our base plate on our camera. I'm gonna put it on. And one thing that I like to do, if you have a gimbal that comes with connection cords to your camera, I always tend to connect those before I actually start balancing the gimbal. So here I'm using an accessory that you get with the Moza AirCross, and this accessory lets you actually start and stop recording from the actual handle of the gimbal. So the first thing I'm gonna do before I start balancing the gimbal, as you can see it's not balanced at all here, is to make sure that the camera is in the state that you're gonna use it. What that means is that if you have, like me, the Panasonic GH5 or another type of camera with a screen that folds out like this, I really like to fold it out so the weight distribution is gonna be how it's supposed to be when you're shooting. And another thing to think about is the lens. So if you're using a zoom lens, or if you're gonna use filters on, have it be in the state where you're gonna shoot. So here I have a prime lens, but if I had a zoom lens, put it on to the zoom range that you want to use it in. And if you're gonna use an ND filter or anything like that, put that on so you have the right weight distribution on. So personally, I like to put the camera as close to the right part of the gimbal as I can, so I can have as small of a footprint as I can while I'm shooting. The first thing I start balancing is this axis, and you try to find the place where the camera is gonna stay put. And the heavier lens you have here, the harder it's gonna be to actually balance this in the right manner. So now you can see that the camera is balanced and it's staying put. So now the second part of the balancing is going to be the front and back balancing, and there we have quite a good place where it's balanced. So now we're halfway through, and the next part of the balancing is going to be the back side of the gimbal. There we go. So that was let's see. There we go. So that was the third part of the gimbal. just adjusting the back part of it. And last but not least is balancing this part of the gimbal. And this is probably the part that I see people forgetting to do the most. I like to use a table, so I put the gimbal down like this. And I try to find a state where the gimbal stays put. And I try to find a place where the gimbal is going to be horizontally straight with the table. So there we go. So now the gimbal is properly balanced and you're good to go with your gimbal. I always tend to actually do this, the 4 steps one more time to just see to that everything looks great. So now you can actually see that one of the positions, the first one, is a little bit off, and now you can try to put that. There we go. Now it's perfect. And I go back to the second position. Looks great. And also the third and the fourth, you can see. So now the gimbal is perfectly balanced and you can start shooting with it. So that was a quick way to balance your setup with the camera and the gimbal. And so remember, 4 steps to getting a real good balance on your gimbal before getting out and shooting. Because if your camera isn't perfectly balanced, it's gonna have a little bit more strain on your motors, and that might turn out to be visible in the video that you're shooting. So if you have any questions for me, please comment below or add us on Instagram or on Facebook. Thank you so much and see you soon again. Bye bye.